The NCAA is likely going to vote to restrict college athletes' freedom to transfer. The NCAA Division I cabinet is voting April 1st on emergency legislation to prevent what are called blind transfers. Now let's talk about what those are, what the NCAA's plan is, and what's likely to happen. Let's start with the basics. A blind transfer is when an athlete unenrolls from their school and enrolls at a new school without going through the NCAA's transfer portal. They just leave. No portal, no window, and no paperwork through the system. You've probably heard about Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin. He was a cornerback, a freshman, and he had a solid year. He withdrew from Wisconsin and enrolled at Miami. He didn't enter the transfer portal, he just made the move. Now the NCAA has a plan to stop it from happening again. And their answer apparently is to penalize coaches and programs that accept athletes like Lucas. Now here's what's on the table. The Division I cabinet is meeting April 1st to vote on emergency legislation. The proposed penalties for any school that adds a blind transfer are: the head coach is suspended from all football and administrative duties for 6 games. The school gets fined 20% of its football budget. Now that's serious money. We're talking about programs potentially losing millions of dollars for signing one transfer. And the original proposal also included a mandatory 5-spot roster reduction for the following season. That provision has been taken off the table for now, but the rest is still alive. Now here's the context you need. The NCAA went from 2 transfer windows down to 1, a 15-day window in January. That's it, no spring portal. So if you miss the January portal, your options become very limited. The blind transfer became the escape valve that the NCAA didn't anticipate. Now they're trying to close that. But these penalties aren't directly punishing the athlete, they're punishing the school that takes the athlete. But the effect on you is still the same. If a program knows they're facing a 6-game coaching suspension and a 20% budget fine just for putting you on their roster, they're not going to sign you. You become untouchable, and that's a real restriction to your ability to move, even though the rule is technically directed at the school and not at you. The question is whether the NCAA is fixing the actual problem or just creating new barriers for athletes. Now, here's the legal side of all of this, because this legislation is going to get challenged in court without question. The main legal theory you're going to hear about is the antitrust claim. That's the Sherman Antitrust Act. That law says you can't have competitors agree to restrain trade. Now, how that applies to this situation is that schools compete for talent. When the NCAA creates a rule that punishes any school for accepting a transfer athlete, they're essentially coordinating competitor behavior to limit where athletes can go. That's a restraint on trade, and that's an antitrust violation, or it could be. And we've been here before. In 2021, the Supreme Court ruled against the NCAA in NCAA versus Alston, unanimously. The court said the NCAA's restrictions violated antitrust law. Justice Kavanaugh wrote separately and basically said the entire amateurism model was on thin ice. Courts are no longer giving the NCAA a pass just because something is labeled a rule of the sport. And that 20% budget fine structure is particularly vulnerable here, because that's not just a deterrent, that's a market distortion mechanism. It makes certain athletes financially untouchable for schools. That's exactly the kind of coordinated restriction that draws antitrust fire. There could also be an equal protection claim here. This one's more complicated but worth watching. The equal protection clause says you can't treat similarly situated people differently without a good reason. The NCAA is a private organization, so this isn't a direct constitutional claim against the NCAA itself. But if state universities, which are public schools, are enforcing these rules, athletes at those schools may have standing to challenge them as state actors. Now, I'm not saying every claim here wins. I'm saying the legal landscape is very unsettled, and the NCAA is operating on borrowed time when it comes to imposing athlete restriction. After Alston, the old defenses don't hold up like they used to. Now here's my take. If the NCAA actually wanted to solve the problem, the answer isn't penalizing programs into submission. The answer is giving athletes a legitimate path. There should be a spring portal window. Even 15 days would give athletes a real option. The January window is narrow, poorly timed, and misses a lot of athletes who are dealing with mid-year academic situations and can't realistically move in a 15-day period. Or you just move the window to the spring. The vote's going to happen on April 1st. Whatever comes out of that meeting, the lawsuits are going to follow. This space is moving fast, and you should stay on top of it.